Welcome to Swift Coaches Academy, a podcast dedicated to bringing health and wellness professionals the uncensored truth behind what it really takes to succeed in the health industry with me, your host, Zenia Wood. As an accredited exercise physiologist and business owner for almost a decade, I'm on a mission to transform the lives of ambitious health professionals like you who want more and are ready to take action to create incredible impact in your careers and unlock financial freedom in your business. So join me as I speak candidly with industry leaders about the struggles and successes from within the trenches through thought-provoking conversations.
In this episode, we have Zenia's conversation with accredited practicing dietitian and owner of All Bodies, Hannah Wilson. They discuss how to navigate the topics around nutrition with your clients, and Hannah provides us with simple, practical, and highly effective solutions to open up conversations that we should all be having more often to improve our client outcomes as health professionals. Make sure to listen to the very end of this episode for some epic advice Hannah has for you and your clients.
Hannah, the lovely All Bodies dietitian. How are you? Wonderful.
I'm good. Very good. Thanks for having me on today.
Of course. I think that one of the reasons that I wanted to get you on is that you're very heavily skewed in terms of exercise or movement, and to be able to have a dietitian's perspective is something that I think is really helpful from someone who deals a lot with people who move and athletes, and really be able to provide some insights into how we not just, I know how to eat, but, how we fuel our bodies and how, even we at Swift can help maybe our clients with their nutrition and little tips and stuff as well. So thank you so much for spending the time. I know you're a busy woman with a booming business, so I appreciate it.
No, I'm so keen. It's such an important topic. Like if, your clients are training hard, then nutrition is going to be there to either take away from some of those results or optimize it further. I feel like there's rarely a middle ground. So really, really passionate about chatting about this. So thank you again.
Of course. So why don't we just give a little bit of your history first, where you've come from, where you are now, and I guess maybe the sector that you predominantly work in and what you're building.
Yeah, awesome. So I don't know how long you want this story to go for, but I'll start at the start and then we can see how we go. So I decided to become a dietitian back when I was a teenager, actually. So for my own experience kind of competing in track and field, and just kind of feeling all the pressures of what it's like to be a teen, and trying to carve out a bit of an identity for yourself, and just felt that then a lot of those social pressures also then played into pressures to perform well in sport and to look the part in sport as well. So then as part of that, I, control what you can control. And food was one of those things that I felt if I controlled that more, I'd be more accepted, I'd perform better, and, I'd look better. So it ended up developing a pretty unhealthy relationship with food as a teenager, quite a restrictive eating disorder, lots of over-exercising. And, if we're listening to this, we're probably health professionals and we know that, that's not actually going to lead to best performance, despite being, leaner, ended up being extremely fatigued, injured, sick, had nothing to give, and overall mood dropped completely and just completely fell out of love with athletics, and ended up stopping. So was like, well, that's not great. That's not ideal. Didn't want other people to go through that as well, even though it, quite common, and was just like, I think keen to learn more about nutrition so that I can help other people. It's quite funny though, because in saying that, it's also coming at it from a still quite a disordered perspective, getting into nutrition, being like, I can put people on all these diets that are going to make them really healthy, because that's what I thought healthy eating was. So, looking to help people, but knowing nothing about what adequate fueling or nutrition was. So anyway, teenage me was like, moving down to Brisbane from Townsville, going to start there and get into dietetics. Went through the degree and was like, sorry, nutrition's not about going on diets. Like, there you go. And was always very keen to keep working in the eating disorder space after I graduated, and had no intention, I think, of working, with athletes or in sport, but then when I did graduate, there wasn't much training, there wasn't much jobs out there to work within the relationship with food space. And so I ended up getting a contracting position with a company, the same one that Zen was at, where it was a big performance and rehab focus. And I was working in a gym, Go Health at the time, which is now Good Life Gym, and just, started to learn more about fueling, I guess, people to be healthier, who weren't sick but wanted to get stronger, wanted to get fitter. And that was really interesting. Kind of put the eating disorder stuff kind of to the side at that point. And then after the Good Life Gym, we kind of came into the main facility, where then I started working with a lot of athletes. Did actually really well, I think, with a few of the initial athletes that I got on board, and then so kept getting a few more referrals. The athletes then would refer their friends in, would connect with their coaches, get more referrals. So essentially then my entire list started to become pretty much purely athletes. Learned a lot about the exercise kind of principles behind what they're doing for training, and then learning then how to fuel that and optimize the different adaptations that they're looking to drive in exercise. Moved away from that company to start All Bodies August 2020. So kind of after, COVID period, that initial lockdown kind of hit. And kind of with the intention of being like, I'm loving working in sport. I'm loving working with athletes. The clients are, incredible. I love the science behind it all. But feeling like there was something missing in the way I practiced, and kind of realizing then that it was still very, very diety, in a sense of being like, you will eat this, you will hit absolute perfect numbers, and kind of realizing that actual performance is a lot more than hitting really arbitrary, targets. And then we started to kind of include a lot more of chat about our relationship with food, relationship with our body, and started to realize that actually a lot of the athletes were still under fueling because they were prioritizing body composition over adequate fuel and adequate then performance, or fuel to perform properly. So right now we're in a bit of a stage where we are working with elite, semi-professional and recreational athletes to optimize their performance, but then also starting to build a bit of like a recovery center, or a recovery part of our business, where athletes who are noticing that their relationship with food could be improved can have a place to come where they can work on that, and then return to high performance sport once they're well. So I don't know, that's kind of my journey, my background, and where we're at the moment with the business.
It's so cool, Han, to see your evolution too, because obviously, we worked together when we were both pretty fresh new grads, and reminiscing about both being at Rebel Sport the other day when we were in person catching up was really cool to sort of chat about. But I think that I've really seen that too, right? Like, you kind of fell into athletes based on the facility you were working in, and then to now come sort of back while still being able to really help the athletes, but from a more inclusive or holistic lens of the neurodivergent stuff that you talk about, and how athletes, you'll give them a meal plan, and I don't know your experiences, but even if they say like they might fuel but then lose or like intentionally cut calories in other areas because there's such internal and probably external pressures to look a certain way, and what an athletic body is meant to quote unquote look like. So I really love that now you can you've had both, and you're able to be this really beautiful blend of, I guess, the traditional more eating disorder or holistic health nutrition with the performance side of it, so you can, I guess, cut through the noise, and that's really cool to see. What I'd love to ask you about, I think a lot of you go.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I never wanted to actually work in sport. I remember when I was at that facility, and I remember telling the head dietitian, being like, don't send me sports clients. I don't want to do this. Like, I want to do eating disorders. But now I'm so glad that I went down that route. It's like, I love it. And I think there's such a need for the blended too.
What I would love, hopefully, our listeners to get out of today is maybe some tips, because I know that particularly asking some nutrition questions can be really challenging, or, sometimes really quite confronting, because, you are asking quite personal things about someone's maybe not so great eating habits, and it's a really personal thing for some people. I'd love to know what you found is really helpful when you speak to other health professionals who maybe aren't dietitians, as to ways that you can bring up these topics, or maybe try and understand a little more about their eating behaviors or fueling patterns, and whether or not someone would maybe need a little more support in their nutrition. Obviously, we know everyone can improve on what they're eating, but maybe some of those key tips for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, awesome. A great question. I think maybe the first thing I would say is just being aware of like the biases that we probably hold ourselves about nutrition. And then I think the clients can really kind of pick up on some of those as well. So it's like, if we're coming at it from like a recognizing that food can actually be so hard. And I think like surely we all experience that, right? It's like in the busyness of life, organizing our groceries, organizing our meal prep, or whatever it is that we kind of do. It's pretty taxing. And I think for some people that can be harder than for others too. So that's just knowing that it's hard is probably the start. The other thing I would say that's probably important to kind of recognize too is just coming at it from like a weight neutral kind of approach, and just even being like, yeah, maybe like for some sports or for some clients, body composition may play a role in their performance, but it's also only one aspect of their performance. And I think if we kind of just take weight out of the equation when we are kind of approaching these conversations and look at it more from like behaviors or more from attitudes and that relationship around food, I think the conversation can be a lot less confronting for clients as well. And the barriers they don't go up. And I think the conversations then can actually take a really helpful route where it's less, I think again, less confronting. So yeah, I would be kind of approaching the client, recognizing that it is tricky, and just trying to understand what is kind of going on in their life that may be affecting their food choices. So I would just start with the question of just like, oh, hey, how's your food been? And just seeing what they say. If they're going well, maybe prod a little bit further, being like, oh, that's awesome. Like, love to hear that. Like what do you typically eat? You could kind of investigate it a little bit. If food's really hard, ask them maybe more about like why rather than exactly what, and just try to get to I think the understanding of their barriers. And I think that will be an awesome place to start. I think we find,
and so when you
the reasons behind we find the reasons behind why they eat, I think even more important sometimes than what people eat.
That's something that it's so true. And I think that not enough people probably realize that that is part of the conversation. Like, why are you eating? Are you bored? Are you hungry? Are you tired? And is it, obviously a coping mechanism for some people, as opposed to, do you just need to have other things that you can do? So it's obviously there's that behavior change element. What are some of the, like, if you were to give me maybe a couple of questions, let's say you spoke to someone about their food and they're like, yeah, it's good. And then they say, what do you eat? You're like, oh, just had some, I don't know, steak and veggies. Like, and it's kind of, how do you maybe approach it from some different angles? If someone's kind of like, nah, I think I'm okay. Or like you get the whole, oh, I know what to eat. But maybe it's typically not the knowing, it's the doing. What sort of strategies have you used to be able to open those conversations, and maybe some actual examples would be great?
Yeah. I even like kind of starting off with even getting them to like rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. So how's your nutrition is a scale of 1 to 10. 10 out of 10 is absolutely perfect, smashing it every single day, so consistent, feeling great. 1 out of 10 is terrible, really not eating enough, not feeling your body, feel pretty awful, and just see where they sit. It's pretty rare someone will say they're a 10 out of 10. If they are like amazing. Not sure exactly where to go from there, but I haven't really had that. Most people are a bit more modest, and they'll probably sit themselves, around a 7, if they're pretty confident. And then I think that then opens up for being like, oh, cool, that's awesome. Why not a 10? What's the gaps there? And then I think that then gets them to really reflect on what is actually holding them back. And again, that's where you can start to address some of those barriers and being like, okay, so like, when when it's a work day, you're a lot more consistent because you have structure. But actually on the weekends, that's where you're just less consistent. So that's where you're not a 10 out of 10, but your body's actually still recovering from a big, training week, or a big, Saturday morning training session. So that's still really important. So what could we kind of do there to implement a little bit of structure? So that's important. You can then even ask the same question then for their relationship with food too. So even if the quality of their nutrition they feel is a 10 out of 10, I think still then prodding a little bit further and being like, how do you feel about food? How do you feel about your body out of 10? Often I think in the exercise realm, you'll probably pick up on different language. I think people use maybe around their training even. Can they take rest days? Have you noticed that they're coming in training more focused on burning calories than actually, getting adaptations from training. So they're probably some red flags that I would 100% be then prodding a little bit more around their relationship with food. So again, asking that same question out of 10, how would you rate your relationship with your body and with food at the moment? And again, just kind of asking a little bit about why or what's kind of playing into why they're not a 10. And going from there.
I think that's such an awesome, easy question that everyone can take now and run with immediately. Just an out of 10, how are you feeling about your food? Because like you said, most people aren't going to say 10. So it gives you that leeway without potentially some barriers jumping up straight away. So I love that. Thank you for that. What about, why don't we do some rapid fire, like nutrition tips for fueling and ways to check in and see if people are feeling appropriate. Like what is appropriate fueling for training? Like who should have like intra training carbs? Like who's that appropriate for? And how do you sort of determine those things?
Yeah, awesome. Such a good question. And I think, if you are like wanting to check in on nutrition for your clients, you probably should have a good idea of what is adequate fuel. So I'd say that nutrition for fuel and also recovery starts with like your base diet. So even before we start to talk about actually what to have before, during, and after specific training sessions, it's like, you would know, how long does recovery take? I always kind of say 24 to 48 hours. Maybe that's wrong, but that's kind of what I would say to clients. So you think of if you're training, every second day, even then every meal and snack is kind of counting towards recovering your body and kind of fueling the different adaptations that you're looking to drive. So I would be starting with, are our clients actually eating regularly? And if they're, skipping snacks, skipping meals, especially, probably a bit of a red flag. Again, everyone's requirements are different, but that's just a red flag to then start to prompt a little bit further. Once we've got that regular base of eating, then we can kind of have a look at what's actually in there. So are there balanced kind of meals in there? Are we kind of getting protein in regularly? We know that total protein matters, but we also know that the protein distribution is what's actually going to be really effective for actually helping our athletes or our clients actually build muscle. So there's a little amino acid in proteins called leucine, and leucine kind of acts as a bit of a trigger to help your muscles actually build up. So that's always really helpful when we're thinking of recovery, especially if our clients are in like a hypertrophy block or rehabbing an injury. And building that muscle is really, really important. So making sure that, maybe at least four of their meals and snacks have a, decent-ish dose of protein. And then also having a little look at, what are they actually having in terms of carbs? So we know that our carbs are our body's favorite energy source. They're the most efficient, the most effective energy source that our body wants to use. And so if we're training hard, getting our heart rate up, we're going to be using more carbs than fats, or we should be. If we're underfueled with carbs, we can see like a 10% reduction in session quality. So, if you have any clients who you want to get the intensity in and they haven't had carbs in their diet for the last, day, that's a bit of an issue. You're not going to be getting as good results as you could So I would be looking for a bit of protein, a bit of carbs in pretty much all their meals and snacks. Fats are important. If they're avoiding fats, then could run into some hormonal issues. And then obviously our colour and our veggies and stuff too. So I think, we've got our fuel, we've got our macros as the, what do you call it? Like, gosh, petrol in like a car kind of thing. And then I think of like the color and the micronutrients as like the little engine parts that actually then allow us to use the fuel. But I would be prioritizing fuel before I prioritize the engine parts in this case. So making sure that we're hitting baseline calories before we worry a bit too much about hitting little vitamin kind of nutrient needs. When it comes to health and performance, if we're not actually eating enough, we're going to run into some more serious problems than if we're not, hitting perfect nutrient targets. So yeah, basically eat regularly, eat balanced, eat adequately, and then we can have a little look around what we're having in and around training sessions. So it's going to depend on how intense the training is. So if we're training for a while, maybe over 45, 60 minutes, and it's pretty intense, we might benefit from a little pre-training snack. And so this could be just a little top up of carbs. So we call them primers, just kind of elevating the blood glucose levels just before a session. You could even do a little bit of caffeine, which is always gives you a bit of extra buzz before a session. Longer sessions, so over 60 minutes, over 90 minutes, we're going to be looking to add a little bit of fuel throughout the session then. And so again, for like different kinds of sessions will require different amounts. These are really general, so these are kind of like based on endurance athlete requirements, so it's going to be different in the gym. But I think you guys can kind of be the judge of how high is their heart rate, how much of the session are they actually working for. Is it a full 60 minutes of continuous exercise? Then we probably want a bit of fuel throughout. If it's 60 minutes of a set, then a chat, then a set, then a chat, less fueling requirements throughout. But yeah, basically as the sessions get longer and they get more intense, we want to build up those carbs throughout sessions. And so if you have clients concerned there, I'd say that probably is where you would be getting a sports dietitian on. But be looking out for that for your clients. You can kind of notice when they're starting to fatigue too. I think if clients are starting to kind of get to, 3/4 of the way through the session, quality is kind of decreased, they're feeling a little bit dizzy, especially, is probably a big red flag. Then, yeah, adding a little bit of fuel throughout is going to be helpful. And then afterwards, I guess we're looking to kind of go back to that regular eating. And so the anabolic window isn't as short as we used to think. So we've always kind of been told to have your protein and your carbs immediately after training. I think there's still some wisdom to that, so you feel better. But we have a little bit more of a gap than, immediately or within the hour afterwards. So as long as I think someone's coming back to their next meal or snack and they're eating regularly, it's probably going to fall within 3 hours. And we're going to, our body's going to take all those building blocks in and that fuel in and going to be able to kind of use it quite effectively. There's something to probably consider, or how long do you want to talk about this? I could talk forever. So a couple of things you could consider for the recovery side is if you do have clients who are training in the evenings, having a couple of doses of protein afterwards before they go to bed can be helpful for helping them recover and to kind of build that muscle or get the most out of the session. So if they do have a dinner and then a dessert has a bit of protein in a couple of hours later, that could be really helpful. And in that case, you could think of having something with protein in it straight after the session and then a dinner even as another example. Other clients, it might be more of a carb focus, especially if they've got 2 training sessions in the day. So if there's less than 8 hours between your training sessions, we want to get pretty aggressive with carbs in recovery. And there's a specific protocol for that, but probably won't worry about that. Just make sure, you're probably referring to a dietitian at that point and knowing that exists.
Yeah. Cool. There's so much. I'm just like racking my brain with all the things. I'm hoping that everyone listening is taking notes because the thing about fats and potentially having hormone issues if you're not having enough fat in your diet. Like that was something that I was like, okay, need to make note of that, like questions to ask, because I know that there's certain stigmas against carbs or fats or different types of areas within nutrition that people sort of stigmatize a little bit, but that's really helpful to sort of even just be aware of. I think, something that we can use with our clients, and just picking up, what did you have for your food? And if they're, they're always leaving oils or butters or not alcohol, sorry, like avocado or one of those like highly fat-based base ingredients out of it, like that can be maybe just like a little flag that you could sort of keep note of as well. There's so much in there, and I really think that probably the important thing you said at the very start, when I was like, cool, like let's go to, high intensity, like intraset fueling, but bringing it back to the recovery happens in the 48 hours after your session. And so effectively, like if you're training 3-4 times a week, that means every meal that you're having is going to either enhance or reduce your ability to recover, right? So if we can be cognizant of that and understand that it's not this teeny little window. I love that you brought up the fact of everyone used to like try and down like some chalky milk and some protein powder or whatnot in that window post training. I remember those days. We'd go next door to the IGA and everyone was there. But to be able to understand that nutrition really is going to be this throughout your entire day. And I think, there's obviously certain reasons and things why people would do something like intermittent fasting or whatnot. But when you're really looking at someone who's looking to perform and the training side of things, carbs are actually really supportive to have, especially pre-training. And I think that's something that is often missed. So those early morning sessions where people don't want to have something in their stomach, like I don't know what you think about this, but I would be like a piece of toast, like half a banana, like something can be really small, but just to make sure their blood sugars are up enough to be able to actually exert energy, to be able to then burn the calories or produce the force required for the exercises they're doing. Those are all really good points, so thank you for those. What I'd love to dive into now is maybe a little bit more around integration and how you have what you found works really well in terms of integrating with other health professionals from a dietetics perspective, and potentially for anyone listening who's like, I really could use a dietitian, but I don't really know how to refer to one, or like what the steps are. If it was potentially you or even another dietitian that someone was looking to create a bit of a referral network or a partnership with, what are sort of the things that have worked for you and you would suggest in that area?
Yeah, awesome question. So I think solid communication is really helpful, because I think, if you're working with a sports dietitian, we're going to be focused on fueling or optimizing the adaptations that you're looking to drive in the gym. I think, it's maybe in a few rare kind of cases, nutrition can drive adaptations kind of independent of exercise, but pretty much most of the time we're relying on what you guys do in the gym, and you're the kind of the lead. So if we don't actually know what your goals are for the block or for the end result, then we could be working towards different goals, which is less than ideal for our clients. So I think having a meeting, having a call, having email at the very least kind of open is really helpful. And and then kind of updating us as that changes as well. So it's fairly likely that you guys will see the clients more frequently than us. We might be seeing them weekly, fortnightly, possibly monthly if they're absolutely killing it, but it's more likely that you guys are probably seeing them multiple times a week. And so you've got some really exciting touch points that you can have. And I think if you notice that they're feeling fatigued, or you notice other things about their training that's either amazing or subpar, then that would be really cool to know as well. So I think just working really closely as a team is going to be really helpful for us and the clients. I also think making sure that we are all on the same page with even just like communication and how we're talking about body composition, how we're talking about food as well. I think, not every client is going to come in with food issues or with disordered eating, but it is more common than I think a lot of us think. So, I think it's like 5% of the Australian population has a diagnosed eating disorder, which is also really an under representation because not everyone's diagnosed or aware that they've got an issue. And then disordered eating is can be quite just as hard or something for someone, and not included in those statistics. So what we'll do, or what your sports dietitian will probably do, is spend a bit of time investigating that as well. And so we'd love to be able to kind of like share some of that with you and what we kind of find working with the clients. And I think if we're on the same page with, again, how we talk about food and how we talk about weight, that's just massive as well for the client as they look to fuel their bodies and kind of improve that relationship with food if they are struggling.
That's really helpful. And I also really love and appreciate that, I guess it makes it easier for us as maybe the exercise professionals, or, even if you are a rehab professional, sort of spending a little bit more frequent touch points with your clients for, us to sort of take the lead on this is what we're doing with the training. And then for you to graciously take the fall of, okay, well, now I'm going to navigate the nutrition sort of in and around that in terms of what is required for them. I think that's really helpful. And obviously it'll depend on the dietitian. Some of them will be like, well, it might even swing, and it might be like, okay, well, their weight management is more of a focus than their training. So we just want them moving. So what do you want from a nutrition? It could obviously bounce back the other way as well. With that. So I think, open communication is obviously a no-brainer. Any sort of referral network, I think those work really well. And then in terms of what it sort of looks like to work with a dietitian. I know a lot of people are like, I know what to eat and it's really expensive, and like I don't really need to pay someone. I just want a meal plan. Like those are probably like the most common 3 things that you hear, right? Like how do you navigate that? Because maybe you as the professional know that they could benefit from some support with their nutrition, whether it's improving performance or weight management or just healthy nutrition. How do you navigate those challenges?
Yeah, you're so right. It's definitely, everyone just wants a meal plan, and then they'll stick to it for 3 weeks and that's that. So we're definitely of the idea that we're going to get good results if we're seeing someone for a duration of time, seeing them to achieve their goal, and then a little bit afterwards helping them actually maintain those results afterwards as well. So definitely being able to communicate that process. So how we kind of work and what we found to be the best through a bit of trial and error is that we start off with, and so this is different to probably say a lot of other dietitians, is we kind of recognize that we do need to prove our worth to a lot of clients. I think the nutrition industry hasn't always been the greatest. It's been very prescriptive, very diet kind of based. And so a lot of people, don't know they need us for a while. So we start off with a complimentary initial, and we call it our road mapping session. So this is essentially our chance to just sit down with clients at no expense to them, no real risk, just for a bit of a chat and just make sure that we're actually the right fit, that they connect with us, because as you can kind of imagine, nutrition's so much more than just what you eat. Like I said before, it's so much about why we eat, and there's a lot of emotion behind food, so being the right fit and having that relationship so important. In that session or prior to that session, they'll kind of fill out a bit of a form, and that's just where we can kind of gather a bit of the boring data of like medical history, all that kind of stuff, and meaning that we can then spend time in that session, getting to know them, chatting about how they're going with their fueling, different barriers that's kind of coming up. And then what we're going to do is nut out a process, a clear pathway, or this is our roadmap of how we would reach that goal. So they've got a goal, they've got things that they're struggling with, and then we kind of want to put, if we can, a timeline to it. So sometimes if there's like an event that, say, an athlete's preparing for, we've got a clear timeline. Otherwise, it's more checkpoints. And so in that, we're we're showing our clients that this is not going to be fixed with a single plan, a meal guide, portion guide, calories, whatever. They can all be tools that can help you get to your goals. But your goals are often a lot deeper than, say, I just want to lose weight. It's like, well, why do you want to lose weight? What's that actually going to achieve? And is weight loss actually going to help you achieve what you actually want? Or is it just, the mechanism that we're choosing, and is that effective? So in that session, kind of creating that pathway, and often, but not always, often what it might look like is, again, establishing that kind of regular base of eating that 3 meals, 2 snacks, whatever, and then kind of building a bit of a performance diet from there. So from there, we might be like making sure that the quality of food is ticking boxes, that protein quality is high so that they're recovering properly, that if they're an endurance athlete, we're building up the carbs based on what they need per hour of training, whatever. So that's how we start. And then from there, we'll pretty much book sessions ahead because we can see that this is really important. We know how long we're probably going to be seeing each other based on your goals and based on our roadmap. So we kind of commit to then that process moving forward, and that's all done really collaboratively. I think nutrition, it has to be collaborative. It can't be top down where the dietitian's just telling you what to do, because we know nutrition, we know it really well, but we don't know the mechanisms of all the things that go on in your life. So we'll map all that out and book in those sessions collaboratively. And then from there, we're stepping through that process. We're starting on, a bit of a meal guide or a meal plan or something. And then we're going to build on that. We're going to build skills. It's not just giving you the knowledge or telling you what to do. It's giving you the skills, so then eventually you don't actually need to see us and you're able to adapt to your nutrition. You're able to stay consistent after our time together. So hope that answers your question. Bit of a long-winded answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I definitely think it does. And in the interest of time, because you are a busy woman, I would love to finish off with maybe one or a couple of actionable items that you think that any sort of health professional who's listening, maybe who's not in the nutrition or diet space, something that they could use with their clients, whether it's asking a certain question in the next session they have, or, how to link to a dietitian if needed. What are those, maybe one or a couple of tips that you would have that they can immediately go and action with their clients, say, this week?
Yeah. Okay. So this is probably going to maybe surprise a few people, but I think the more I think about things, I'm like, this is so important. So I would actually say screening for eating disorders. I would be blanketly getting every exercise professional to actually screen for eating disorders when their clients come through the doors, because we know that the earlier the intervention, the better. We know that they are incredibly common, especially if we're working with high performance individuals, A-type individual, people who are, getting a health professional on board to look at their exercise. They're going to be pretty driven. And so they're possibly the kinds of clients who are at risk. So screening everybody, men, women, if we would think of them as overweight individual, it doesn't matter. So, and we would do that with the EDEQ. So we screen all of our clients. And so I can give you that link, Zen, because I think blanketly when they come through the doors, do that one. And then if they do seem to score highly on that, referring into a dietitian with experience in that area. A GP as well would be really helpful. And then the other thing I would be doing is in your sessions with them, just ask that question of how's their nutrition, how are they rated out of 10, and kind of going down that with those prompts. I think just opening up the conversation casually. It doesn't have to be, anything you talk about in a hush-hush way, but as long as it's, fairly weight neutral, performance focused, I think you could have some really awesome conversations.
Awesome. Beautiful. I love that. And if people were like, okay, I've asked the questions and now I need Hannah and her team at All Bodies because they want some support, where do they find you?
Yeah, so you can find us on our website. So it's www.allbodyservices.com.au, and then also our Instagram, which is all_bodies_nutrition. And yeah, we'd love to have a chat. So if you send us through an email with some of the details, again, we're opening up that communication channel and can be able to better help your client, I think, when they come through, and keep you updated as well with what we chat with them about. But would love that.
Cool. Beautiful. Amazing. Anything else that you wanted that I didn't ask you, or anything that you wanted to end on?
No, I don't think so. I think I appreciate
We nailed it.
Appreciate the chat. Nailed it. Thanks, Zen. It's great to chat.
Beautiful. Alrighty. And I just would like to say that Hannah and her team at All Bodies are incredible dietitians who not only do sports but also disordered eating and general nutrition as well, hence the All Bodies, not just one type of body. And we refer people to Hannah and her team as well. So I can't recommend her and her team highly enough. And they are in Brisbane, but also do virtual stuff, as do we. So please reach out, even if it's just to see if maybe they can help. And I know that Hannah and her team have a heart of gold, and they're not going to take on people that they can't help. So that road mapping complimentary session is something that I think is incredible that you are doing out of the goodness of your heart to make sure that you can get more nutrition advice out there to hopefully help the wellness of the world. So thank you, Han.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Zen. Thanks for having me on today. Yeah, awesome chat.
Of course.
Did you find something valuable in this episode? If so, I'd like to ask a tiny favor. If you have 30 seconds now, I'd love you to follow or share the podcast. That way, we can continue to bring you more real, raw, and uncensored stories from industry leaders. We also love hearing from you and what you loved about every episode. The best way to reach out is to DM me personally on Instagram @SwiftCoachesAcademy. Until next time, and in whatever you do, move swiftly.